Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Temple City Council for Thursday, February 7th, 2019. Please rise as Reverend Roscoe Harrison leads us in the invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Municipal Court Judge Kathleen Person.
Let us bow. Gracious and merciful Heavenly Father, we just come, Master, to thank you for your grace, and we thank you for your mercy. Master, we come on this day at this time to ask thy guidance and to ask thy wisdom as this council meets to determine the future of this city. Because, Master, we know that each time that they meet, it has a little to do with not only this future, but we will reflect in many years as to what they did. Father, we ask that you continue to give them wisdom, continue to give them knowledge. We ask it all, Master, because we know you can do it all. In the precious name of your Son, Jesus, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is for public comments. Citizens who desire to address the council may sign up prior to this meeting, but we have nobody that has signed up tonight. So we'll skip that portion and we'll move on to item 3, which is to administer the oath of office to Municipal Court Judge Kathleen Person. I'll come to you. It's usually on the other side. I'm used to taking it from you.
That's right.
Very good. I, if you'll state your name,
I, Kathleen Person,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office
of Judge of the Municipal Court for the City of Temple,
of Judge for the Municipal Court for the City of Temple,
State of Texas,
the State of Texas,
and will do to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
and will do to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
and the laws of the United States,
and the laws of the United States,
of this state,
of this state,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. And while I'm down here, we'll go ahead and move on to item 4, which is to recognize Mark Engelke as the City of Temple Employee of the First Quarter. And Chief, if you'll come on down.
When you heard your name, that's when you come forward.
That's right. This isn't school. Very good. Well, Mark, congratulations. It's my honor to read this proclamation in your honor for your winning the Employee of the Quarter Award. So if I may, from the office of the Mayor of the City of Temple, the proclamation reads, whereas Mark Engelke was hired by the City of Temple on February 18th, 2008 as firefighter for Temple Fire and Rescue. Whereas Mark is an outstanding employee who goes above and beyond his regular job assignments, does exceptionally great work, and demonstrates a positive attitude toward work responsibilities, co-workers, and citizens. And whereas Mark continually demonstrates a positive can-do attitude, receives positive feedback from supervisors, co-workers, and citizens, and regularly goes the extra mile. And whereas Mark has been nominated and selected by the Employee Engagement Committee to be recognized as the Employee of the Quarter for the first quarter 2019. Now therefore I, Timothy A. Davis, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, hereby recognizes Mark Engelke for the excellent service provided by Mark, and does hereby thank and congratulate him on being named Employee of the Quarter. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, the 7th day of February, 2019. Congratulations. Yeah. I think you got some things that you'd like to. Why was Mark? I feel like Johnny Carson up here. Why was Mark nominated and ultimately named Employee of the Quarter?
Okay, so what Mark did was he had a fairly routine call. It was a water shutoff call. Here, I'm going to give you this because I'm going to drop it if I don't. And it was at about 2 a.m. in the morning. So he went out to that, and what's required by us, of course, we go out and we shut off the water so it quits damaging those individuals' homes. But Mark and his crew went way above because after talking with the resident, I think it was a holiday weekend as well, or right around the holiday, and they talked with the resident. They didn't have the means to remove the water, and of course they couldn't because of the time of day and the holiday nature of the time frame. They couldn't go and get the materials from a store to remove the water. So they went back to their station, picked up their shop vac and a bunch of squeegees and towels and what have you, and removed that water so that no more damage was done to their home, and really helped out that citizen, which is way over and above what's required by us. Obviously, we're just required to turn the water off, but again, went over and above at, again, 2 in the morning to help out that citizen and our family. And remove that water. And so just, it was a great story when I heard it, and so we were very happy to nominate him for the Employee of the Quarter.
Very good. Mark, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Mark, who gets that?
Oh.
You get that?
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Mark.
Second
Again,
fire employee in a row, so they're sweeping it this year.
We're going for the three-peat.
where's Chief Mitchell? Come on, Police Department. Okay, very good. Moving on. Item 5 is a public hearing. Public hearing to conduct a final public hearing and consider a resolution approving the proposed substantial amendment to the adopted Community Development Block Grant 2015 through 2019 Consolidated Plan. Ms. Smith.
Mayor, do you want to go ahead and read in 6 as well?
Oh, yes, of course. And then item 6 is also a public hearing to conduct a final public hearing and consider a resolution approving the substantial amendment to the Community Development Block Grant 2018 and 2019 Annual Action Plan, including the funding recommendations. Sorry about that.
No
Thank you.
problem. Thank you, Mayor, Council members. So this is similar to what we did at the last council meeting, but what we're doing tonight is conducting the second public hearing for amendments to both the Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan. As we talked about before, the Consolidated Plan outlines the goals and activities that are taken within a 5-year period within the City of Temple. And the Annual Action Plan further defines what those programs are implemented within that 5-year Consolidated Plan. We did hold a public meeting on January 22nd in which we received no comments. In regard to the Consolidated Plan, it was originally adopted August 6, 2015. Our proposed changes are to defund the Housing Improvement Program and to include a roadway and sidewalk improvements to 2 blocks of South 7th Street, located generally between Avenue H and Avenue J as a goal and priority. And just to reiterate what we talked about last time, the Housing Improvement Program is still something that we want to look into. We have some edits that we want to make to it and then possibly come up with a new housing program. And so we'll be utilizing this time frame to bring something before you prior to next fiscal year. So you can see this is the area. It extends between Avenue H south down to the cul-de-sac. In regards to the Housing Improvement Plan allocation, the total amount of funding that we have is over $663,000. And the South 7th Street cost estimate, the project engineering, is just over $85,000. We have an estimate of $550,000 for project construction, but that is just an estimate that we have created in-house. We'll have to wait until the project actually goes out to bid before we'll actually know what that is. So we could be rather high, but we'll find out that later. But regardless, our total estimate would be $635,710, which is lower than what the HIP allocation is. So with that being said, we would like to conduct the public hearing, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Council, any questions or comments? Okay, then, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being none, I will close this public hearing and entertain a motion on item 5 and 6.
I'll make a motion for approval for 5 and 6.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales? Mayor Davis?
Aye. Next item is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section, the consent agenda, are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and will be considered separately. It's been requested that item J be tabled. So, council, I will entertain a motion on the consent agenda minus item J. That's item 7A through 7QQ.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion to second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales? Mayor Davis?
Aye. Moving on, council, I'll entertain a motion on tabling item 7J.
Mayor, I make a motion to table item 7J of the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Davis?
Aye. Moving on to the regular agenda. This will be the second reading. Second reading and a final hearing for item 8. There'll be items 8A, B, and C. Item 8A reads, to consider adopting an ordinance designating a tract of land consisting of approximately 40 acres and located at the southeast corner of Windland Road and Moores Mill Road within a tract of land identified by Bell County Appraisal District as 410044 as City of Temple Tax Abatement Reinvestment Zone Number 39 for commercial and industrial tax abatement. Item 8B reads, to consider adopting a resolution approving a tax abatement agreement with Niagara Bottling LLC and Tanglefoot Properties LLC, which will cover increases in the taxable value of real and personal property on approximately 40-acre tract of land designated as Tax Abatement Reinvestment Zone Number 39. And 8C reads, to consider adopting a resolution authorizing an economic development agreement with Niagara Bottling LLC and Tanglefoot Properties LLC for the construction of a new water bottling facility and the construction of certain public improvements. Ms. Landeros.
Thank you so much, Mayor and Council. So tonight, to summarize all of that you just read, oh, it's good if I turn that on. Donald? Oh, no, there it goes. Thank you. So to summarize all of that, we are doing the second reading of the ordinance that designates the Tax Abatement Reinvestment Zone Number 39, a resolution authorizing the tax abatement agreement with Niagara Bottling and Tanglefoot Properties, which I will just refer to as Niagara for this presentation, and a resolution authorizing an economic development agreement with Niagara. So I did not get a chance to change this date. This should be November 15th of last year. You all approved on first reading the ordinance that designates Tax Abatement Reinvestment Zone Number 39, and we anticipated that it would come back on December 6th of last year, but Niagara asked that we wait a little bit longer for continued negotiations to happen and for some more due diligence to happen as well. So that's why you're seeing second reading coming back tonight on the designation of that zone. As a reminder, tax abatement reinvestment zones are authorized by the Texas Tax Code in Chapter 312. A city can designate an area as a tax abatement reinvestment zone if the designation is likely to contribute to the retention or expansion of primary employment or attract major investment in the zone and would contribute to economic development within the city. The city of Temple has, we have adopted standards for tax abatement, which we are required to do under Chapter 312, and our economic development policy states that council can consider designating a tax abatement reinvestment zone if at least two of the following criteria are met. The project involves a substantial increase in the property value for a new facility or also an increase for an existing facility, would make a substantial contribution to redevelopment efforts or strategic economic development programs, would have high visibility or stimulates desired concentrations of employment or commercial activity. We do believe that the project that Niagara has proposed here in Temple meets at least two of those criteria, if not more. They will expand the employment base. It is a major investment in the city of Temple, and obviously contributes to economic development within the city as required and anticipated by Chapter 312. Niagara plans to construct a water bottling and manufacturing and distribution facility here in Temple. They have submitted an application for tax abatement on real and personal property improvements. They are requesting the city consider tax abatement that would give them 10 years of abatement in those percentages. So it would be 100% abatement for years 1 through 5, and declining percentages each year after that until year 10, which would be at 50%. Niagara anticipates making a total investment of about $90 million in the project. It would be over 2 phases. The project would also include the creation of 70 new jobs within the city. The Phase 1 investment is estimated at $70 million in real and personal property improvements and 49 jobs. And Phase 2 is an estimated $20 million investment in personal property only in the addition of 21 jobs. Our finance department has calculated the potential fiscal impact that the agreement would have over 10 years, and it would be the abatement of approximately $5 million in property taxes. The standard tax abatement agreement includes all the requirements that are set forth in state law, including recapture provisions if the applicant defaults for any reason. We are required to provide statutory notices to all other taxing entities if the agreement is approved, and we will do so if council chooses to approve it tonight. As I stated before, staff does feel that the project meets the minimum requirements for tax abatement that's set forth in our city policy because it's stimulation of employment and commercial activities and the significant increase in taxable value on the property. The economic development agreement is the third piece of this item. In that agreement, Niagara is obligated to construct Phase 1 of its improvements by April 30th of 2020, those real and personal property improvements, and construct Phase 2 by December 31st of 2022, personal property only. In addition, the job requirements are in the agreement as well, so that's 49 jobs by April 30th of 2020 and the other 21 by the end of 2022. The city is obligated to construct a 36-foot wide roadway south of the site, construct a 12-inch water line that would serve Niagara's site, but as well as other properties in the area, construct a 10-inch wastewater line, and those improvements would have to be done by September 30th of 2019. Council, on your consent agenda, approved some construction contracts for those infrastructure improvements, so staff is ready to get going on those projects. And then we are also agreeing to waive some water and sewer tap fees. I have included the renderings provided by engineering for the road project. You can see on the left is Windland Road running north and south. The road that the city would be installing is about 2,100 linear feet of roadway on the south of Niagara's proposed site, which is outlined in yellow. And if you all recall, East Penn Manufacturing is also building in this area, and they are to the south of the proposed road and will also utilize the road as part of their development. And then here is the 12-inch water line. You will see that this water line was actually anticipated to be installed in a future year for the expansion of Moores Mill Road and Old Howard Road. So staff has accelerated that project to be installed this year. But you can see the alignment of that water line that will serve, like, as I said, Niagara's property, but also other properties in the area. So that is a very quick summary of the tax abatement reinvestment zone, the tax abatement agreement, and the economic development agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions. Bryn, I know she may actually have some comments she wants to add as well, and Tracy may as well.
Council, if I may, thank you, Kayla. Kayla's been incredible in her work on this project. I also wanted to thank Adrian Kennedy, who is our Economic Development President of TEDC. He's done a lot of work to get us to this point, and staff, I think, is all very excited about this project and recommends you consider approving these agreements. I did want to mention, as Kayla noted, of course, the property is in the reinvestment zone. So the property tax revenue associated with real improvements would go to into the reinvestment zone fund. So while this proposal does include abatement of taxes, I did want to point out that over the 10-year period, we would be phasing in tax revenue for a property that's not otherwise currently on the tax roll, and we anticipate just under $9.5 million in additional revenues, tax revenues coming from this investment. So it's a significant investment in addition to the jobs that this project will create. So this has been, again, I think a project that is worth considering.
Council, any thoughts? Comments? Projects like this don't come along every day, for sure. And I think 6 months ago, we didn't even know this project was on the horizon. And here we are, approving and shortly signing agreements for something that's going to make a huge impact on the city of Temple. So it's extremely exciting. Adrian and his staff were ready. The reinvestment zone board was ready. Certified sites, a lot of legwork went in behind this vote, prior to this vote tonight. So staff, you're to be congratulated. Tracy, Kayla, Bryn, Lacey, everyone's worked very hard on putting this together. And so thank y'all for acting quickly for the good of Temple. So it means a lot to this council for all the legwork that's been done. So thank you all very much for the good work. So if there are no comments, I'll entertain a motion for approval on items 8A, B, and C.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve. Applause items 8A, B, and C on our agenda tonight.
I'll second it.
Great. We have a motion to second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales? Aye. Mayor Davis?
Aye. Moving on. Item's not up for public comment. I don't, this isn't up for public comment, so no. It's good, Milton. It's good. Thank you, though. So moving on to item 9 is the second reading and a final hearing to consider adopting an ordinance establishing curfew hours for minors in accordance with the Texas Local Government Code, Section 370.002. Ms. Landeros?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, you all approved this ordinance on first reading at the last meeting, but we had several comments and questions about the ordinance, so instead of putting it on consent agenda, we thought we'd bring it back. And I'm going to put Chief Mitchell on the spot here in a little bit since he missed out last time. But just as a reminder, in '94, the City Council established curfew requirements for minors under the age of 17. What spurred that was an increase in juvenile violence, gang activity, and crime by and against individuals under the age of 17. Why we're here now is that the local government code requires that the city every 3 years review the ordinance's effect on the community and on problems that the ordinance was intended to remedy, conduct a public hearing, which we did at the last meeting, and either abolish, continue, or modify the ordinance. Council has continuously renewed the ordinance every 3 years since 1994. but the current ordinance will expire this week if it's not passed tonight. And so, as a reminder, our curfew hours on Sunday through Thursday are 11 p.m. through 6 a.m. of the following day, and on Saturday and Sunday, they are 12:01 a.m. to 6 a.m. of the following day. These next few slides, I apologize, there's lots of words and legal jargon, but there was some confusion amongst staff, admittedly, at the last meeting about what the ordinance requires, so I wanted to lay that out for everyone tonight. So, under the ordinance, a minor commits an offense if he remains in any public place or on the premises of any establishment during those curfew hours. The ordinance also states that a parent or guardian commits an offense if he knowingly permits or by insufficient control allows the minor to remain somewhere they're not supposed to be during those curfew hours. And then the owner, operator, or any employee of an establishment could also be found to commit an offense under the ordinance if he knowingly allows a minor to remain upon the premises during the curfew hours. We do have several defenses in the ordinance. It's a defense to prosecution for the minor if he or she was accompanied by a parent or guardian at the time, if they were on an errand at the direction of their parent or guardian, if they were in a motor vehicle involved in some type of interstate or interstate travel at the time, if they were engaged in an employment activity or going to or returning home from an employment activity, if they're involved in some type of emergency that requires them to be out, if they're on a sidewalk abutting their residence or the next door neighbor, if that neighbor has not complained about them being on the sidewalk, if they're attending an official school, religious, or other recreational activity, if they're exercising First Amendment rights, such as free exercise of religion or speech or the right of assembly, or if they've were married at the time or had been married and had disabilities of minority removed. So we talked a lot last time about what defenses could possibly come up, and so those are the defenses that we've listed in the ordinance. An offense is punishable by a fine of not to exceed $500, and if required by the family code, the municipal court can refer jurisdiction to a juvenile court. This is a slide I had from the last presentation on just briefly on benefits, and then I'd ask Chief Mitchell to chime in as well. But the ordinance provides for protection of minors from each other and from others during certain hours of the day, promotes parental oversight and responsibility for children, and is intended to reduce incidents of juvenile crime. At the last meeting, there were a lot of specific questions about what the police department sees with this ordinance and how they utilize it. So Chief Mitchell's going to speak to that.
Thank you, Kayla, and good afternoon, Council. Yes, I apologize for not being here for the other meeting, but I was actually at a executive board meeting for Texas Police Chiefs Association, but I understand Deputy Chief chimed in a little bit. This is one of those ordinances that we don't use very often, and if the stats that were provided to you guys, we used it 24 times in 2018, and of those 24 times, only 2 of those citations were actually sent to the courts for processing. It's important to understand that when our officers stop these juveniles during these hours of curfew, they actually just do a field interview for them, find out what they're doing there, and they usually take them home and drop them off. They never enter into the system, and that's what we're trying to do, is to keep kids out of the system. We don't usually, process the child until it's their 3rd offense. So it's not something that I feel that our department is abusing. It's a tool that they use to make contact with these kids when they do find them out in these hours and they don't really have a good reason to be out. And again, they usually just find them, find out what's going on, take them home and drop them off to the kids. If we run into the same child 3 times, then we do the paperwork on them.
So I think it is staff's desire that council would approve the renewal of the ordinance establishing curfew hours for minors, and this slide just repeats what those hours are, and staff is not requesting a change to the hours. So if you have any questions for myself or Chief Mitchell, we're happy to answer them. There's no public hearing associated with the second reading.
Council, any questions? Seems pretty straightforward and reasonable. So, okay. If there are no questions, then I'll entertain a motion on item number 9.
Second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long.
Aye.
Councilmember Walker. Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Mayor Davis.
Aye. Moving on to item 10 is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 41, Credit Access Businesses, to include a general update of the chapter and 2 additional provisions for transparency and protection for consumers. Ms. Rice?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having me here today. I'm going to go through the staff's proposed amendments to Chapter 41. This is part of our city code review process. This is the first chapter that we're bringing before Council. Chapter 41 was actually passed by City Council back in 2016, so the proposed changes are very minimal, just because it's so recently passed that law really hasn't changed. It's just a general cleanup of the chapter. I do want to say there has been a change from your agenda packet that was recently given out to today's ordinance that staff's asking you to consider. I'll go through the reason for the change later in the chapter, but I did want to let you know there's a small change. So here's an overview of the presentation and of the proposed changes. Just as I said, a general cleanup of the language and formatting. There's actually an update of a staff position title, just because titles have changed in our city since 2016. The proposed change that I was talking about from the agenda packet to today's ordinance I'm asking you to consider is an addition of a definition. And then staff's also requesting to make an addition of a provision for transparency and protection of consumers who use these businesses. So this is an example of the cleanup of the language of the formatting that I was talking about, and this is actually just a screenshot of the red line draft that was given to City Council. And as you can see, the numbers are spelled out just to make it very clear what the numbers are. The section numbers are, I added a period. Also, I just reformatted the title so it's all lowercase. And then also throughout the chapter, staff's recommending to change the word shall to more direct verbs rather than shall, which could be may, must, will, directly changing it to what is a more definite verb. So in this case, the shall was changed to a must.
These are things that lawyers do for fun.
It is. It was great fun.
Like an
Yes.
example. Yeah.
This is the title change that I was talking about on the main slide, or the first slide. Our current ordinance has the title of General Services Manager as the person who's in charge of enforcing and administrating this chapter for our city. General Service Manager, we no longer have someone by that title in our city. And so the proposed amendment is to change the General Services Manager to the Director of the Department designated by the City Council, City Manager, or their designee. Currently in our City Secretary's office handles all the registrations for the credit access businesses, and if anyone ever has a complaint, those complaints do get sent up to the legal department to review to see if there is any violation of our city ordinance. So this is the change that I was talking about from the original draft that was sent in through the agenda packet. So currently in our current ordinance, credit access businesses are required to provide contact information for owners of the business and the nature and the extent of their interest in that business. So in the original proposed change, staff had added a requirement to disclose those with a financial interest in addition to owners who have an interest in the cab. And the term financial interest is not defined, and staff originally put that in because other cities have that language as well. Waco, Austin, Killeen all have that language in their ordinance, and there was a thought that that would add more transparency to the consumer who is using the cabs. And then when we had a staff meeting, I think it was Tracy who pointed out that financial interest was not defined, and that could be very broad. That could be anyone who benefits. I mean, an employee, a member, anyone like that. I don't know how that got forward. And so it was just a very broad, open-ended, vague addition to that chapter. It would make it hard for cabs to actually comply with financial interest because it would be difficult for them to know what it was. So in light of the staff feedback, our office legal department decided to remove that proposed addition of the of a financial interest and go back to the original language, which is currently an ordinance of just owners and the interest and the extent of their interest in that business. Sorry, this is very confusing. And then add a definition of owner to make it more clear to cabs what they're actually supposed to comply with, because owner wasn't defined in our current ordinance. And so the proposed addition of the definition that staff is requesting City Council consider adding to our chapter is any person who directly or indirectly owns a credit access business. For publicly traded companies, the term means any person who directly or indirectly owns or controls 10% or more of the outstanding shares of stock in the credit access business. And that would give cabs the ability to know exactly what they should, who they should be including in their registration when they register at the city. All right. And then to move on, this was a change that was in your agenda packet and continues to be in the draft that staff is asking City Council to review. And this is just a chart of what's currently in our requirements for what cabs are required to provide to consumers. And so in black, with the black check marks, are everything that our current ordinance requires cabs to supply to consumers. And that is agreements that are written in the consumer's language of preference, as well as English and Spanish translation of agreements on the premises. And for those that are unable to read, credit access businesses are required to, in our current code, read to the consumer both the agreements and the required notice disclosures in the consumer's language of preference. But what we're currently missing in our ordinance is required notices and disclosures being written in the consumer's language of preference, and also having English and Spanish translations of notices and disclosures, which those are required by state law to be included in I guess, given to the consumer. So it was just staff's recommendation is to close the gap to make sure that all consumers are aware of what they're getting into with all those required notices and disclosures, just as they are for agreements. So does anyone have any questions that I could answer?
Council?
Any questions? I will say, as a reminder, this ordinance was passed in 2016 when there was some major concern about the operations of credit access businesses. The state of Texas still has not passed any state legislation related to their operations, and so our ordinance is, I think, still relevant and valid and not preempted by state law. And the general requirements of the ordinance are for credit access businesses, which are defined by state law, to register with the city, and it allows consumers of those businesses to make complaints if they feel that there's been violations under the ordinance. So this is a really simple cleanup of that chapter, and as Amanda said, the first in our process of updating the code. And I will probably say it every time she gets up, but I want to thank Amanda for her work. I will be eternally grateful to her for the work that she's put in, not only on this chapter, but all the chapters that you're going to see coming forward. So we're happy to answer any questions, and this is a pretty simple first one to get through.
Council, any questions, thoughts, comments?
No, I'm just thankful that you're able to continue keeping this and make it very clear for the customers. It's a very important tool that we have that protect them.
This item is subject to a public hearing, so at this time, I'll open that public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item 10. We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long.
Aye.
Councilmember Walker.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Mayor Davis.
Aye. Item 11 is a resolution for fiscal year 18-40-PLT to consider adopting a resolution authorizing approval of the final plat for the Bend, a 16.46 plus or minus acre, 59 lot, 2 block, 2 tract residential subdivision with a developer requested exception to the Unified Development Code, section 8.3.1, related to the use of public park fees located at 5120 South 31st in Temple. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. This property has actually been before you several times
recently. And just to kind of go over briefly the timeline, the original plan development for this property was adopted back in 1995. As you may recall, late last year, an addition of about half an acre was added to the existing PD, and the development plan, which is basically the same through a conceptual design as the plat that you'll see tonight. That layout was approved in December, and so what is before you tonight is the subdivision plat for 59 lots. It went through our development review process in the fall and was deemed complete in late December. And there's some minor work on deeds and restrictive covenants that need to be finalized prior to the recordization. But the reason that the plat is before you tonight is because of the exception that I'll talk about momentarily. And just some background on the project, the plat itself, again, being approximately 16 acres. The property is within 2 zoning districts, general retail and multifamily 2, and I've got the breakdown on the slide there, with a range in the lots between approximately 6,700 feet to the largest lot being a little over, just under 14,000 or 13,852 square feet, with the minimum lot size for both zoning districts at 5,000, so that's in compliance. The Bend subdivision will actually create 4 local streets, with the primary access from South 31st will be a local street called Bend Drive. Both water and sewer are available to the subject property, and that City Council is the final plat authority since the applicant is requesting an exception to UDC Section 8.3.1, and that's related to the use of public park fees, not necessarily public park fees as a whole, but just the use of them. And that's relative to trail connectivity and the park improvements to the adjacent Waterford Park. So the image on the left is the final plat, and again, it's essentially the same configuration as the layout that is the topo utility plan that was the development plan that you saw in December. So with the UDC exception, this is an exception to parkland dedication and park fees, and because of the subdivision's proximity to Waterford Park, staff and the developer have discussed the possible construction of a bridge spanning an approximate 40-50 foot distance across the existing concrete drainage channel that separates the subdivision from the park. So at this time, the city and the developer have agreed on a couple items that I have numbered here on the slide. Item number 1, the developer will add a sidewalk easement on top of a proposed 15-foot drainage easement to provide a pedestrian access to the bridge. The developer will obtain a cost estimate for construction of the bridge and will determine whether it is feasible to construct the bridge. If the developer finds that it is feasible, the bridge will be completed prior to the issuance of the last certificate of occupancy within the development. And regardless of the feasibility, the developer will pay to the city $13,275, which is the required park fees. So the Waterford Park Master Plan is on the left and identifies improvements as well as a trail. The location in red is approximately the location of the bend. Again, this is a conceptual. The image in the middle is an enlargement of the 15-foot drainage and sidewalk easement that would be between lot 17 and 16 within the subdivision. And the image on the right is actually the location of that easement within the larger scope of the subdivision. So just an image looking across South 31st of the subject property currently as it is today. And an image on the bottom is an aerial image of the drainage easement or the drainage channel with an approximate dimension of about 45 feet. Again, this is not intended to be the specific location of where the bridge could or would be built, but just merely to show the width of that drainage channel. So staff recommends approval of the final plat for the bend, and the developer requested exception to UDC Section 8.3.1 related to the use of park fees. And at their January 7th, 2009 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 8-0 to recommend approval, and the developer requested exception. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available should you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Council, any questions?
I do have a question.
I'm sorry, Mark, that I didn't ask this in workshop, but I didn't quite understand that. I had a question. You had a slide that said some language that it sounded like they're going to get a bid to build this bridge.
Yes, item number 2 is that the developer has agreed to get cost estimates. And again, we've looked at different materials, whether they be aluminum, metal, wood, and basically the overall feasibility.
Well, I have 2 questions related to that. If the developer finds it's feasible, what if the developer finds it's not feasible?
Staff's understanding, and perhaps Kayla or Brian can add additional information, is that the bridge at that time would not be built, but the park fees will still be paid for other amenities.
Okay.
And the intent was to try to bridge that gap between the subdivision as best we could.
Right, I understand. And, okay, let's assume or hope that the bridge will be built. If it is built, who owns it, who maintains it? The bridge.
It's my, go ahead, Kayla.
We will, okay. Regardless of what the construction is, we will.
That's my understanding, yes, or the intent
Yes.
is for us to take over the maintenance of it afterwards.
Okay, good, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Member Long, the way that I process this is simply that the goal is for a bridge to be built from the development to the park.
Right.
We believe that that will exceed the cost of the required park fees.
Park fee, right.
So the developer is doing some due diligence to see if they can make that possible. We're bringing this exception request to you in the event they are able to do that. We'll waive the park fees and instead they'll build the bridge.
Okay.
Otherwise, if they find it not financially feasible, if it well exceeds the required park fees and they're not able to make that work, then the exception in essence will be null and they'll pay the park fees.
Fine. Great.
That's how I process.
Okay.
That's how I understand the
Much, very clear, thank you.
they'll give the easement.
Right.
Anything further? Okay. At this time, if there are no further comments, I'll entertain a motion on item number 11.
I'll make a motion to approve item 11.
Second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long?
Aye.
Councilmember Walker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales? Mayor Davis?
Aye. Item 12 reads to consider adopting a resolution authorizing amendments to an existing Chapter 380 development agreement with Short-Term Lending GP, Inc. to assign the agreement to H5B3 LLC to increase the grant amount to $115,000 per property and to extend the construction timeline. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So you may recall this property or both of these properties at 110 and 112 South First Street from June 28th of last year. And so in blue, you can see where those are located. Of course, this is First Street, this is West Avenue B. It's adjacent to the Extraco Motor Bank. And so it not only includes the buildings, well, shown in that historic photo previously, but also the area behind it, which would be an outdoor seating area and play area for not just kids, but adults as well. And so I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But first, just a little bit of background. And so this table is comparing the agreement that was approved back on June 28th with the current proposal. And so H5B3 LLC has purchased both of these properties from Short-Term Lending GP. And so Short-Term Lending GP had proposed a total cost of $300,000 for 110, $508,000 for 112. And so with new cost estimates for the new owners, those costs would increase to $599,000 for 110 and $875,000 for 112, which would put both properties in a Tier 3, and I'll remind you what that is, but essentially the highest level of reimbursement within the SIS grant program. And it would also increase the amount of reimbursement from $70,000 on 110 that was approved back in June 28th, and $90,000 for 112, up to $115,000 for both properties. So essentially, you're looking at encumbering the SIS account by an additional $68,000. And so the original proposed uses for both of those buildings were a coffee shop and a restaurant. The new owners want to specifically do a pizza restaurant that includes a tap room, a deli, as well as a coffee shop. And so just a quick reminder, this is the table shown in our SIS grant application. This is the Tier 3 category, which requires a project investment of $500,000, which, so now each of those addresses qualify for that. And then up to $115,000 for reimbursement for downtown, which is this is the downtown zone, and double facade. And due to the visibility of the rear along the 3rd Street overpass, it has been determined that these qualify as double facades. And so your actions tonight include increasing the funding amounts to the $115,000 that we talked about for both properties, assigning both grants to the new owner, H5B3 LLC, and then essentially starting the 1-year deadline over, which would have expired on June 28th, so extending it an additional year from date of approval, assuming that this gets approved tonight. And so you can see the current facades up in the top right, and you'll recognize the proposed renderings or elevations because those are not going to significantly change. So that's what you approved back on June 28th. And here's the rear of those facades, and once again, you know, why these are considered double facades. And you can see examples of what the outdoor seating areas will look like with shade sails and a playground, in addition to just outdoor dining. Also include a fire pit or two, and looks like some Adirondack chairs and maybe a life-size Jenga and, you know, beanbag toss, you name it. So lots of fun stuff. And so here's a conceptual floor plan of the building. And so, of course, this would be the front along South 1st Street. And top right-hand corner would be the coffee shop with a little deli and pastry area. And then there'd be a birthday party room that accesses directly back into the kind of the outdoor play area. Pizza and beer down on the 112 property, and it would include a rotating pizza oven, so pretty substantial infrastructure and investment. And so staff recommends approval to fund up to the $115,000 for both properties. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Council, any questions on item 12?
No, I'm excited about it. It's going to be a wonderful addition.
It really is. Very
You guys just like pizza.
nice. Yeah. We shouldn't be talking about it at 5:54 at night.
All right. If there's no questions or comments, then I will entertain a motion on item 12.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long? Yes. Councilmember Walker? Mayor Pro Tem Morales? Mayor Davis?
Aye. Item 13 is to consider adopting a resolution appointing one council member to the Hill Country Transit Board. In our workshop, we discussed both items 13 and 14, and Councilmember Walker has graciously volunteered to be the City of Temple council member to sit on the Hill Country Transit Board. So if No further discussion, then I'll entertain a motion on item 13.
I'll make a motion that Jessica Walker be approved to sit on the board. Second that motion.
Very good. We have motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long.
Aye.
Councilmember Walker.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales.
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye. We already discussed you can't back out. So,
I wouldn't.
and thank you for that. Item 14 is to consider adopting a resolution appointing members to the following city boards and commissions. Again, this was all discussed in workshop. And so 14A was the Building and Standard of Appeals, 4 members to fill expiring terms through March 1st, 2023. And during our workshop, we agreed that we would reappoint Casey Simpson and that we would hold 2 positions for a master electrician and also hold 1 position for a journeyman electrician. Item B is for the Building and Standards Commission, 2 members to fill expiring terms through March 1st, 2021, and 3 alternate members to fill expiring terms through March 1st, 2021. And the Building and Standards Commission will reappoint Russell Stinman and Kevin Bonner to fill expiring terms through March 1st, 2021, and 3 alternate members, which are Bruce Norman, Jeff Bird, and Jeremy Langley, to fill expiring terms through March 1st, 2021. Item C is the Civil Service Commission, 1 member to fill an unexpired term through September 1st, 2019, and that is to appoint Brian Daniel to fill that unexpired term on the Civil Service Commission through September 1st, 2019. On the Development Standards Advisory Board, we needed 3 members to fill expiring terms through March 1st, 2022. And it was agreed that for the Development Standards Advisory Board that we would reappoint Ginger Tolbert, appoint William Harris and Jonathan Perez to fill the expiring terms through March 1st, 2022. On the Library Board, we needed 1 member to fill an unexpired term through September 1st, 2021. And it was agreed that we would appoint Erica Mendoza to fill that unexpired term through September 1st, 2021. And on the Parks and Leisure Services Advisory Board, we needed 3 members to fill expiring terms through March 1st, 2022. And on the Parks and Leisure Services Advisory Board, we are reappointing Lacey Adams, Dr. Mark Smith, and Scott Keela to fill those expiring terms through March 1st, 2021. And then lastly is the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We needed 2 members to fill expiring terms through March 1st, 2021, and 2 alternate members to fill expiring terms through March 1st, 2021. And it was agreed that we would reappoint Jeremy Langley and Kay Gudea to fill the expiring terms through March 1st, 2021. And the 2 alternate members would be to reappoint Brian Daniel and Matthew Calhoun to fill the expiring terms through March 1st, 2021. So, council, any further discussion on item 14A through G? There being none, I will entertain a motion in a second.
I make a motion to approve everything as you read it out beautifully.
I hope.
I'll second it.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Long.
Aye.
Councilmember Walker.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales.
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye. Thank you all very much for attending tonight's city council meeting, and this meeting is adjourned.